Welcome to Ascend to Earth, the podcast where embodiment is the ascension. I'm Virginia Underwood, your co-host and sacred wisdom keeper, oracle, and earth steward. I'll be joined by my daughter and co-host, Hannah Pearl, soul alchemist, astro herbalist, and intuition mentor. This is a space for the seekers, the sensitives, the cycle breakers, and the wild hearts returning to their truth. Each episode will explore what it means to come home to the body through sacred conversation, emotional alchemy, nervous system healing, ancestral wisdom, and earth-based spirituality. We'll also be sitting in circle with other wisdom keepers, visionaries, and embodied leaders, voices who are here to midwife the new world. Here, we don't escape, we descend, we feel, we root, we rise. Let's ascend to Earth. Welcome. Today's topic is on the sacral chakra, and we're going to look at blocks to the sacral chakra and, what it could mean to live fully embodied in your joy.
Well, I think we were having this conversation the other day, and I think it's relevant to the new paradigm, the new, the Earth is going through a shift, so we're collectively going through a shift because we are the Earth. So I feel like, and I don't know if you're noticing this too, but there's a shift away from the traditional job, like trading your time for money and wanting to do something that's more fulfilling. But I also see that a lot of people get stuck in like actually knowing what's fulfilling to them.
Absolutely, because we have been so conditioned to do what the status quo, like do what our society and our, you know, peer groups are doing. I mean, we get into a romantic relationship, and how many people I know, so many of the clients that come to me feel like they get lost in relationships. They go into it and they kind of morph into their partner and what their partner likes, and they kind of lose themselves in it. And I think that is so uh, like a little, oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? It's just the microcosm reflecting the macrocosm. I think that's you know,
Hmm.
we are, we don't know who we are. We've been programmed to, and I remember this from my own childhood, that I was programmed to, behave a certain way, look a certain way. I mean, I even had you go to frickin'
Etiquette
etiquette
classes?
school, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that was such the norm, you
That
know,
was,
when I was growing up, and my mother and her mother. Um, it's such a ingrained, like, patriarchal, step in line. It's that linear
well, it's even the way
box.
the school system is set up that way too in America, where you're in, a room full of a bunch of kids, and all the kids have to sit down and shut up and listen, and then you just regurgitate all the information that you're being fed, and it only suits one type, you know, of learner, and
Right.
not all of the like kinesthetic and the experiential learners. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I remember being really bored in school and not applying myself because I could feel, even though I didn't know consciously or I couldn't put a label on what it was, I could feel that it was like backwards. And I also have had an issue with authority, so it was like someone sitting there telling me that I have to do something a particular way or whatever, and it's like, no,
Right.
I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah. Like I remember my mom telling me like I'd come downstairs and I'd be dressed and I'd think I'd look good and my mother would critique every single thing that I had on. Don't like your hair like that. You've got too much makeup on. Those earrings don't match. Go through the whole thing. So then I'd feel really self-conscious and, oh my God, I don't know how to dress. I don't know how to be presentable. I can't trust myself. And I can remember when I had you thinking, man, I don't want my kid to be like, have that kind of anxiety about what she looks like. I want her to feel like she can be herself, whatever that looks like. So I can remember you when I started letting you dress yourself. I didn't, I did not, like try to influence that at all. So you would wear, something bright, fluorescent green with something, I don't know,
purple tutu
that,
or some shit. Yeah.
what?
I said a purple tutu or some shit. Like, yeah.
Right. And you would say, how do I look? And I would say, you look beautiful, Hannah. Do you feel beautiful?
Well, I remember getting older, and then I would walk out of the room, and you'd be like, I'm just gonna go in the other room. I'm not gonna even say anything.
No, because
Like,
that was my judgment was coming
no, I
out
know.
and I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to make you feel like you had to be something you weren't.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that because I do wear whatever the fuck I want, and I do like, and I have a style, and I got to discover that
Yes,
because I got
exactly.
to go through all the trial and the error of like what worked for me and what didn't. And
Exactly. And that's what we're really talking about here is
Mhm.
that we get cut off from that ability when we have to conform instead of that discovery process. And so all these people now are in this place of, well, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want to do. So you've got to go through the boredom. You've got to go through the uncomfortableness of trying new things and maybe some of them don't work and you don't like them but that's also good information because it's
Mhm.
showing you kind of leading you to yourself and what you actually do like but so many people will give up at that point because it didn't feel good. I don't know what I like. I'm never going to figure it out kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And then like equating that to their worth. Like because I don't know then I must not be good enough. Like that says something about who you are.
Right.
And it's like actually that has nothing to do with who you are.
Right.
Yeah, it's completely unrelated. None of these things outside of you are you. Like,
Right.
and you don't actually have to know because guess what? Nobody actually knows anything.
Right.
Yeah, we're
And
all just, yeah,
it's
go ahead.
only through the doing and the trying new things that we discover what we don't like and what we do like,
Hmm.
which then leads us to that sense of fulfillment and that feeling of unfettered joy, which then magnetizes the things that you want.
Hmm.
And there's so much talk about law of attraction and how, you know, like I hear from people all the time that it doesn't work or that, you know, they can't figure it out. Well, do you know yourself? Because if you're if you're saying all these affirmations, but you're not really feeling it, then you're not know you don't know yourself, first of all.
Hmm. Yeah, affirmations aren't gonna work if you're telling yourself a lie. Like you can tell yourself this thing over and over and over again, but if you don't feel it in your body, then of course it's not gonna work. And if you're trying to manifest something from like uh, an ego desire instead of getting in touch with the deeper desire that you have, which probably is unrelated to any material thing or whatever, and it's actually more rooted in connection and love and all of the things that on a deep level we need as humans.
Right.
And when you're coming from that place and you can feel that in your body, then you're going to attract. But if you're coming from a heady ego place of like, oh, well, I'm going to manifest $1 million, whatever, like maybe you will if you really believe that on a deep level, but like it's not going to come from like telling yourself a billion times in affirmations that you're manifesting $1 million. Like it's going to come from
No.
you feeling like ecstatic bliss and joy in your body and doing something that brings you that joy. And so then you attract.
Yeah. It's a feeling of worthiness within yourself. If you feel worthy of $1 million just flooding into your life,
Hmm.
you're going to eventually manifest that because you're going to create from that place of pure joy instead of, trying to logically think, well, what do I have to do in order to make $1 million,
How do I do this? How do
Right.
I? Like, stop focusing on the how. You don't actually get to make up the how because you've been alive for how long? This tiny little bit. I actually think about this sometimes when I'm like walking in the woods and I look at all the trees and they're like super huge and like I'm just like, wow, I'm actually tiny. I'm like this baby in terms of the planet and like that's very humbling. And so, yeah, I don't remember what I was getting at with that.
We were talking about manifesting like $1 million worthiness.
Yeah, I don't know. We're just little people.
Well, we are like babies and we are learning and, you know, it's all a process. And I think that, the more that we can uncover what really lights us up, what makes us feel good, then
Mhm.
we can manifest
Yeah, that's what I
our
was gonna say.
soul's
It's
purpose.
like the thinking that you know how it's gonna happen when you've only been alive for such a short period. You only have this much experience. We look at our children and we're like, "Oh, you don't have any idea like what's gonna happen," or they like hear we hear them make all these stories up about what this means and all this stuff. And that's what we look like, you know? It's like we're still doing that. No matter, even if we're 80, we're still making up stories about what all these things mean, but we really have no idea because we don't get to make up the how. But we get to feel and we get to discover through our joy. Well, through all the
All
feelings,
the experience, right?
we get to discover more. And I feel like the more that you discover, the more that you realize that you don't actually know anything. And that within itself is like you have to come to a point at some point to surrender. Otherwise, you're just going to keep fighting and hitting walls and
Yeah,
wondering why nothing's working.
right. Yeah, this idea of resistance, um, you know, And I think it goes back to our conditioning that we think that we need to make things happen or we need to force them. We need to push in a certain direction. And when we do those things, what we're really doing is resisting what's actually here and what's actually happening.
Hmm. Yeah, because if
Like
you always need
I
it
say
to
it
be
again,
different, if you always need it to be different, then you will never find the joy in what is right now.
right? And that means that when you have $1 million in your pocket, it's actually not going to change your experience that much.
You're gonna want
You're
more.
s- you're going to want more, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be enough. So if you can work on being here now, being present to what's happening and letting go of what you need it to look like or to feel like or to be like, that's just getting closer, getting you closer to what you actually desire. And in that, you know, people get so uncomfortable in boredom,
Hmm.
but boredom is the key to creativity. So many things are created out of someone being bored,
Yeah. It's the process to get somewhere. And you can't, like, our society, with all of its technological advances and all of these things where we can instantly get everything that we desire on some level, like immediately to our doorstep, you know, then it's
right? I
like,
mean,
then
like
you,
Amazon, you can now order stuff and get it the same day within hours of when you ordered it. It's crazy,
well, yeah, instant gratification. So then, of course, like now we have people chasing dopamine highs because they just want that like quick fix. I gotta have this right now. But then serotonin, that's more of a long-lasting, fulfilling feeling. And that comes from a process. That comes from doing the hard work, doing something. Maybe it doesn't have to be hard, but doing some process and then feeling the accomplishment of having it done. And then you get the satisfaction of doing that, and that's way more sustainable. And even, I mean, it goes deep as to say, like, even how we get our food.
mm,
Like, because we don't have the process of like foraging or hunting, or, like a lot of us aren't growing our own food, so we don't have the process of finding, or, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, of obtaining our food. We can just go to the grocery store and pick it up.
right?
Then we don't have the same satisfaction. And so of course we're not like getting the most out of what we could with our food for many different reasons, but I feel like a big one is because we are not connected to our food in the same way anymore. And that's just an example of how that happens on many, many different levels. Satisfaction, and we're all just like chasing a quick high.
Right. Yeah. It keeps us distracted. It keeps us, not discovering our truth. It keeps us in these endless loops of dissatisfaction, truly, and
Hmm.
um, disconnection. Um, it reminds me of, I can't remember the guy's name, Johann. But anyway, he wrote a book called Chasing the Scream. And a lot of people have heard about the research in this book, which is where they took the rats and they first of all split them apart. So they isolated them and then they put and don't quote me on this because I don't always remember things, in the
Because you're a
exact
human.
way. But they had two water bottles. One water bottle they filled with cocaine, the other one was water. And so when these rats were um, isolated, they didn't have anything to do. They were just alone in this little cage. they would go for the cocaine pretty much every single time. But then if you put them in a cage with other rats and you gave them activities to do and you gave them, comfortable conditions where they could feel relaxed and they could connect to the other rats, and you put those same two water bottles in, none of the rats would drink out of the cocaine-filled water bottle.
Hmm.
Because what we're craving is that connection, that ability to um, do the things that feel good to us. We're looking for those dopamine fixes, but in a more sustained way, like what you're talking about with when you actually get to do something, like you grow a garden. Like, how satisfying is it to grow food in your garden and then to pick that food and make a dish out of it,
It's actually probably like one of the most magical things I've
right?
ever felt. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it feels so good. And if you think about it from the energetic aspect of this, where everything is frequency. So if you, let's say somebody who gets their food from the grocery store, you go pick up a squash from the grocery store. That squash was probably grown in an industrial field, so it probably never had a human touch it, right? So it's just machinery. So it's
Hmm.
vibrating at this really neutral, uh, cold kind of frequency. It's picked by that machine. It's processed by other machines. Um, if it's touched by a human, it's probably on some conveyor belt, and that human is not, maybe they're happy with their life, but maybe they're working a minimum wage job. They're stressed about how they're going to pay for, gas or food or whatever themselves or their rent, So you've got all that stress, and then that food is then taken, transported by somebody who is unconscious, who's not, connected to this vegetable. And then it goes to a grocery store where they just kind of mechanically put things into bins. So there's no connection. It's not like this person has a reverence for this vegetable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I was
Whereas,
thinking.
yeah, whereas if you are the one who's growing it in your garden, man, you have watered this, you have watched it grow, you have an investment in this vegetable, and you know that it's going to nourish your family. And so
Hmm.
you pick it and you feel this love and this gratitude for the earth and for the time and the energy that both you and the earth took to grow this piece of food. And then you go in and you have this meal, and it's going to feel even more fulfilling and
Hmm.
nourishing because of that whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, not even to mention the soil level, like how we've stripped the microbiome from the soil. So like in the industrial example, it's like it's even more not being touched by life because it's been sterilized and possibly even grown GMO, so it repels certain bacterias and bugs and whatever. And then it kills off everything in the soil. And then they have to put like nutrients back in that aren't natural.
Right.
Like, and so it's just like this continuous cycle. And it's not, and in the way it's grown, even in the sense of the monoculture, doesn't have diversity. So
Right.
it's so devoid of life in general. Like we are eating dead shit a lot.
Yes.
And that's
Which
why,
then,
yeah,
yeah, when we eat dead shit, what's it doing to our alive body?
we feel dead. It's like this numbness inside.
Right.
And you
Right.
don't have reverence for your food, when you're in that state. Like even when you're going to the grocery store and picking up your food and then you go to eat it, are you sitting down and actually enjoying it? Or are you turning the TV on and
Right.
numbing the fuck out and just eating because you have to?
Right.
And so that you can go to bed and that you could wake up the next day and do it all over again.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that rat example where we feel completely disconnected from our life and what is true.
hmm I had a conversation with a woman once when I was like, I can't even, I was maybe in my early 20s. And I remember talking to this lady, and all I remember from our conversation was one thing that she said that stood out to me. And she said, every to live in this society, everyone has a crutch. You have to have a crutch in order to live here. Because and it was just like I that mold in my mind for like years, like just constantly going back to that statement that she said because it was like, at first when I heard it, I was like, yeah, you're right. We do. Like it was kind of almost like permission to like just do the things and like have an excuse why I can,
Check
you know,
out.
get the dopamine high or whatever because it's hard. But then it's like the more that I sit with that, the more that's like, no, that's complacency. That's like if you want something to be different, then you have to be different. And it doesn't have to be like that. We can actually, what if it was sacred? What if everything was holy? What if it wasn't a crutch? What if you didn't need something to hold you up? What if you could hold yourself up? And that makes me think of more food examples because if you look at like broccoli, for example, if it's grown in a laboratory, which is another thing, a lot of our food now has been grown inside, which is crazy. So it's not even getting the exposure to the sun. It's not even getting exposure to the elements. And then you have broccoli that's grown outdoors that gets hit by the wind, that gets gets stepped on maybe, or something. It gets touched by nature. And you look at first of all, the nutrient density of the one grown outside is exponential. And also the flimsiness of the stalks of like the stalks outside are sturdy because they've been pushed by the wind. So they had to compensate and get
Build
stronger.
resilience.
But if you're grown in a lab, then it's flimsy because you had the quote perfect conditions to grow. And when we grow people that way, then we become flimsy. We become weak and we need stuff outside. We need a pole to hold on to. We need a crutch. We have to walk with crutches because we
Right.
can't handle because we were not exposed. We did not build resilience to life.
Right. We aren't able to trust ourselves and to even know what's true for ourselves.
Yep.
So, how do we find that out? How do we get to the truth of ourselves? How do we get to that place of unfettered joy and reverence for life?
We have to be okay with being uncomfortable.
Mm,
We have to learn how to accept pain because without pain, you will not know joy. I thought about this the other day with sadness. I had a sad song playing and and then I thought about it because I often gave myself shit growing up because I would listen to these sad songs and I would cry and I would just be like, whatever. Well, I thought about that the other day when the sad song came on and it was like, I'm actually grateful for sadness because without sadness, I wouldn't have reverence for life. Without sadness, there wouldn't be like this deeper like meaning, Like it wouldn't be like, oh, this is beautiful. Like there is a beauty in sadness.
yes.
because it is the knowing that everything is temporary.
Right. And speaking of that temporariness, you know, we have to sit with these feelings. We have to sit and experience them, not stuff them, not distract ourselves from them. We have to actually sit with them. And I was reading something the other day where it was talking about an emotion only lasts for about 90 seconds. So if you can sit in that uncomfortability for a minute and a half without attaching to the story of what that emotion brings up for you, then it will move through you.
Hmm.
The issue is we get attached to the story. We feel the sadness and we say, well, why do I feel sad? Because I lost my job. Okay, that's fine to feel sad for that, right? But you lost your job. Okay, it happened and you're still alive. You're still here. There's still things for you to do. And when things end, it's because it's time for something different. It's time for something new. There's no judgment, there's no good or bad about that. It's just different. But if
Hmm.
we hold on to that sadness, oh, I lost my job, it's the end of the world, it's the end of the world, we're going to perpetuate that feeling. We're going to stay in that energy and we're going to create from that place of sadness, which is not going to make us happy. It's going to
No.
keep us in that feeling of sadness because nothing's going to work out. Because if
Yeah.
you go to a job interview and you're exuding this, "Oh, my life sucks," even if you're not outwardly expressing that, you're still inwardly feeling that and it's going to be felt by that person who's interviewing you.
And if you do end up getting a job in that state, then that job's only going to perpetuate those feelings that you came in with.
Right. So if you can sit with that feeling of sadness, and this is where reparenting is so huge. Sit with that feeling of sadness. The story comes up, I lost my job. That's our opportunity to reparent ourselves and say, oh, you did. Yeah, that doesn't feel good. I'm here for you. Let's just sit in that right now. Let's just feel that.
Hmm.
And you feel that sadness. And then it starts to move. And another thought or another feeling of, maybe neutrality, maybe apathy comes up. And so you can sit in that place of apathy, of not having any feeling about it. And that feels a little bit better than sadness. And
Hmm.
you just let yourself stay in that feeling. And then that feeling moves and, it starts making your body want to move. And so then you have the thought of, oh, well, I can go do this or that. And then we can move through those feelings without getting depressed, without
Hmm.
staying in
About staying in the
that
feeling.
frequency.
Well, and it's like that goes back to the dropping the attachment to how it's going to happen. Like the process has to look a particular way with your feelings. You have to feel a certain way, or if you feel something sad, then that is a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of you. And it's like, no, this is a natural progression of emotion, of the human experience, and that's nature. And nature has a process, and you just have to trust the process of nature because your body knows what it's doing, because bodies have been around for a long time, longer than you. And they, like our bodies are our ancestors. Our bodies have adapted to, like, they've adapted. We've learned how to stay alive, you know? So it's like you have to trust, because on some level, there's like some biological, your body's always trying to keep you safe. It's always trying to keep you alive. Process happening that's triggering some survival or connection conflict. So even though our mind thinks it's whatever, this person cut me off or whatever, it's like deep, it's like that's a survival thing. That's like a, I'm worried for my body's safety. But we don't have to attach. So it's so much more than the thought or the story of what's happening. So if we can like almost let those thoughts pass by like clouds and just
Not
allow,
almost. Yes.
yeah, let them pass by like they're clouds, like you're observing them. You don't, and when we start judging them, that's actually attaching. We start judging, when we start identifying. I had an example of this last night because my son had a temper tantrum about something, and because he was tired, and my partner started, he just kept poking at him. What story are you trying to tell yourself right now? Blah, 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 blah. And I just looked at him and I was like, dude, stop. Just let him feel his fucking feelings. Like it's he doesn't he's 7, first of all. He doesn't have to know. Do you know what you're feeling all the time or why you're feeling it or whatever? Like just let him feel it. Just I know that's uncomfortable because he's crying and it's like rocking your nervous system and you don't like that feeling inside your body, but that's it's not about you, you know? It's like just let him have that. Literally within 10 seconds after that, everybody calmed down. He's
And what
like,
a
everything,
beautiful opportunity for you to retrain your nervous system to be okay in situations that are uncomfortable
yeah.
and to allow the child to have the experience that is wanting to move through him right now.
Hmm. Yeah, because we don't actually know. Like,
No.
and I don't want to make it all up. That's too much work. I'm here for the experience. And I think having a child too is very, I mean, it's like a direct reflection of your own inner child. And so those feelings that come up in you, or maybe your parents didn't like when you were upset and they were always trying to, oh, shh, it's okay. Like, it's okay, it's okay. Or shut up, like, don't do
Or,
that,
yeah, go to
you
your
know?
room. Yeah,
Yeah, nobody
deal
wants to
with
hear
it on
that.
your own.
Yeah. It's like, okay, but we all have to feel those feelings. And repressing
And
them also feels like blocking your joy. When you repress, that goes back to the sacral chakra. Being, we know that energy center as being a center of feeling pleasure, but it's also our emotional center. And so if we're blocking or repressing any of our emotions, we are not going to know what joy feels like. We're not going to allow ourselves to feel pleasure because pleasure doesn't have to be this conscious ego, I like this and I don't like this. We can find pleasure in every single sensation. Pleasure is the allowance of the full sensation.
yes. So do you have any advice or any tips for somebody who wants to create from that place of joy, wants to start living from the truth of who they are instead of the conditioned?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it can get really deep. So I think the best place to start is small and to just be aware. Just continue to bring your awareness back to the feelings that are coming up in your body and not trying necessarily to control them. Um, but the more that you can bring your awareness back to what's happening in this present moment, like the more that it will, like over time, it'll just get easier to feel. You don't even have to do anything. You just have to look at it. You just have to be willing to look at it, which can feel like a lot. So I feel like nervous system regulation, like just coming back into your body, focusing on your senses, even if you just do it for like 5 minutes, or like showing yourself that you are safe. When you feel triggered and there's this like, ooh, you can like feel your heartbeat or whatever, and you're just like getting into all of the sensations of what this excitement feels like in your body. And then you look around and you are like, okay, I am safe. Like I'm sitting at this desk. Like there's nothing happening. Like I'm not being chased by a bear. Everything's good. I have everything that I need right now, whatever that looks like. And and then it just creates space for you to have that feeling. And then you're like training your nervous system to see like, okay, it's okay. It's like a child. Okay, yeah, you were triggered by that. I hear you, I see you. And look, it's okay. Look where we are. Look what's happening. Pay attention, be aware, be present. And that creates safety over time.
Yes. Yeah, anything we can do to cultivate mindfulness. So being present, only doing, we've been so rewarded for this idea of multitasking and, you know, being able to juggle all these different things at the same time. And I think really what you're speaking to is getting back to doing one thing at a time, being fully present for whatever is happening right now.
Hmm.
And the way that we can cultivate that is to start a mindfulness practice where and maybe you start small. I remember my teacher, I read this book called Mindfulness Yoga by Frank Buccio. Anyway, the first practice that he has you do is to eat a raisin. And that's all you do. That's all you're doing is
Hmm.
eating the raisin. And you're feeling the textures, you're tasting the taste, you're just experiencing how your body is experiencing the raisin, just do that. And it only takes a minute to eat a raisin. So it's not like this is asking you to completely flip your world upside down in order to start doing this practice. Just start with a minute.
Hmm.
And then you can
Yeah.
expand that and, be present with your feelings. Because that takes a lot to be in a world where we've been so conditioned away from feeling our feelings. To really sit with them for a minute can feel like an eternity.
Yeah. It can feel very unsafe, and the body wants to do whatever it can to get you out of that because it doesn't correlate it with being safe to feel.
Right.
So it's like I was thinking of David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, and he gives an example in the book about like this man who he wants to stop eating all these cookies. He just eats all these like cookies. And his advice was don't stop eating the cookies. Like keep eating the cookies, but just count how many cookies you eat each day. Don't judge yourself, just count. And it was like he counted, and he's like at first he was eating a lot, and then after a while he slowed down. And then something would happen at work or something, he'd come home and eat like two sleeves of cookies, and then but he'd keep counting. And then eventually it got to the point where he was just tired of doing it and stopped doing it. And it wasn't hard because he allowed himself to do it. And I feel like that's the same thing too. Like The judgment is what gets us stuck. The shame gets us stuck in these. So it's like, yeah, you don't feel safe. That's okay. Yeah, it feels really hard. That's okay. Yeah, it is fucking uncomfortable. That's okay. Like,
Keep going.
yeah, it feels like everything's falling apart. Yes, that's okay.
Yes.
Allow yourself to feel that.
Yeah, because it is going to fall apart because it wasn't something that was sustainable. It wasn't something that actually worked. So you want it to fall apart, but it's really uncomfortable when it does.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe you just like maybe you notice a feeling and you can only notice one sensation about it. You can notice one, like wherever it is in your body. Where do you feel it? And then you just count how many times you felt that sensation in your body all day, you know? And you just do that every day and maybe that's all you do. And then over time you'll start to feel more dimensions of that feeling and then you'll start to notice when that feeling's happening and then you'll start to notice like it will eventually unravel
Right.
and you don't have to
Yeah,
put so much pressure on having it all figured out right now.
right. It's like having a sweater that a thread is coming out of, right? And you start to pull on the thread and it just starts, unraveling a line or two. No big deal. Keep going. Now you've got it unraveling, half of the sweater. Eventually, it's going to unravel the whole thing.
Hmm.
It just takes time
Yeah.
and to continue to
Yeah.
do it.
And it's like, and also if you think of the thread, it has to come back around to that same place. So it's like a cycle and it's coming back and you're gonna go back over the same things over and over again. And sometimes it's gonna feel like you're not making any progress
Right.
until eventually you have a pile of thread and then you can make something new with it.
Yes. Yay. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I feel complete.
Okay. Thank you for joining me. This has been a really enlightening discussion, and I hope that anybody watching this has gotten something useful from it. Um, yeah, I appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast.